So Jim, tell us a little bit about how this hobby started for you.
It started a long time ago when I was in 7th grade. I got a library book out and had a photo in it that showed a slot car track, which was very popular at that time. You know, slot cars were the in thing to all teenagers. And there was a hobby shop locally, and I got a magazine out of there, and it was a picture of a slot car track that was out west. It was huge. It had a pit area that you enter. And this photo in the library book that I got showed a little flagman with 4 cars coming around the turn and tires like at Riverside, you know, on the apex. I thought that was so cool. I thought about it the rest of the day. All the classes went by like velvet. So I went home, I had a plastic track, and luckily in the garbage of the neighbor I found another track, and I put all those together, and I had a layout in the basement. Then I fell in love, got married, bought this house, and I still wanted to build that track with all the decent scenery around it. Of course I couldn't, because to run 4 cars, the track is so wide it would take up most of the basement. So I developed a way to narrow the track, and I was able to do the scenery that I always wanted. I've always been into fine scale modeling.
That's excellent. So what year did you actually start building here, this track?
Oh, you got me. I think I started planning it in 1985, and I didn't cut my first piece of wood till I knocked my garage down, which was in 1987, and I used all the wood as the basis for this track.
So let's talk about this. The amazing thing about this track is, while other people might build a track and it can cost thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars for the amount of stuff here, other than the cars, because we know, and we're going to get to talk about the cars, what did you think you've invested in this track in money from your own pocket, and where did the rest come from?
Honestly, I'm very proud to say I don't think that I've got $300 in this whole track. And it's basically because I'm not the type of guy to throw any wood away. I mean, even the garage I took down one piece at a time, knowing that I could build a structure for the track. And I laid it all out, knowing what I wanted to do, everything from bank curves to snack bars hidden in the different corners and garages. So I build everything from scratch, everything from coffee stirrers to plastic straws. And the corrugated aluminum roofs you see are the spacers between cordial cherry candies from Christmas time, you know. So I save all that stuff, and that was half my hobby. Of course, I had to build a basement that could support all that junk, but little by little, it became a track. It took 35 years, but I'm very proud of it.
It's a living track, right? Let's talk about the fact that it's a living track.
It's not done yet. It's not. There are many corners and many places on this track that I am not ready to say is done. You know, by the time I detail it and weather it and set it up so that it when you take a close-up picture of it, it looks like the real thing. I'm not satisfied.
Yeah.
And I find my joy in that. You know. There are so many places on this track that nobody even looks at, but I'm still happy that I got that detail.
The little details, right? And how many generations of young people and mature people have played on this track?
I'm shocked myself when I go back and look at pictures. You know, every first Friday for about 8 months a year, I invite neighbors and relatives to bring their kids to come and race. It's mayhem. But as they grow, just like Ryan grew, you know, to be a fine young man, he looks back and remembers playing on it, you know what I mean? So we can play on it and I can enjoy it. My friends who are artists appreciate the detail I put into it. A lot of guys who have fine train layouts really enjoy the detailing I put on it. But the secret to my success was designing a way to narrow the track to a true 1/32 scale width. Normally, to run 4 cars, you need a track that's almost 2.5 feet wide, which would eat up a lot of the basement, if you will. And by creating a way of combining the tracks together and then having a hairpin where they can change lanes, the cars can pass each other. And yet I can narrow them down.
So let's talk that. We know very well, obviously, that you're extremely capable of working with almost any material and changing it into something completely different. Let's talk a little bit about your background.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your family history, where you went to school, what did you do for work, how, you know, all that stuff.
Well, I've always been able to work with my hands, and numbers were no good for me, you know. I didn't do well in school when it came to math until I discovered drafting. I didn't know what a fraction meant until I learned the ruler and learned that, and then I could really put my hands on stuff and I understood what I was doing. So once I realized that I was good with mechanical and small detail, and I always loved modeling, I focused on drafting and I became a designer at Ford Motor Company. And I did a 32-year career at Ford's. All the while, during the boring meetings, I'd be, instead of taking notes, sketching what this corner on my racetrack was going to look like, you know. It got me through. Yeah. And I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. And I've had my failures, but most times I was pretty good at taking a straw and building something out of it.
Well, any work of art has the failure and the successes, right?
Well,
yeah,
I guess.
That is a work of art.
Thank you.
So the other interesting question is the collection of cars that you have here is outstanding. And I want to talk about how during the upturn and the downturn of this
slot
hobby,
cars,
how you managed to do some things that actually affected not just yourself, but the whole industry, at least in the Michigan area.
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
Let's talk about that. Let's start with the original cars, how they were, where you went from one car to another.
Sure. Slot cars started in the late 50s, early 60s, and all the manufacturers began to create tracks about 1962 that looked alike. And they all manufactured their own cars, but just like any other racing, the more money you throw at it, the faster your car goes. The faster your car goes, the more people you beat. The more people you beat, the less people want to compete with you, and pretty soon it chokes itself. Through the 70s, slot cars got faster and faster. They turned into thingies, and the hobby died. It died away. So here I was, a young man wanting a slot car track, and they made no more slot cars. So I spent at least 10 to 20 years with my sons going to not car shows, but toy shows. And I would collect any broken slot car I found. And in doing so, I collected enough pieces that my sons and I, and about 6 or 7 of the Boy Scouts in my troop, worked on these trucks up here. These trucks were plastic 1/32 scale snap-on models, and we built the chassis from scratch using old slot cars. And then I was working in the Jaguar program, and I met 2 British engineers, and they said, back home, we have slot cars. And it turned out that Scale Electric, who made slot cars in England, had narrowed their focus to only racing a car that was a model of an actual race car, had to have a driver, had to have a number. So it never died away in England or Europe or Belgium especially. And they began producing cars in about 1995. And one of those engineers brought me a gift at Ford's, and I was amazed. It was a beautiful model. And I wrote to the dealer in Belgium, and I began to import them, and the guys at Ford's loved them because they were beautiful, beautiful cars to put on their desk. And then every Wednesday we'd race on my track. And little by little, the guys were so thankful they'd get me a car. And then I started helping other guys build racetracks, and I'd get cars. There were times when I would go shovel the snow and on my porch, and I hit a box covered in snow, and it was race cars that somebody had sent me. I didn't even know. So that's how this collection came about, mostly with helping others, and I'm really happy to help others.
But I also understand that the dealers around here started figuring out, hey, we can get cars from Europe too, right?
Well, Andy Smith of Professor Motor, he probably paid me the biggest compliment in my life when he wrote in his website, he called me a world-class modeler. I'll never forget that.
Which you are.
And Andy pushed for people to group together still, and us old-timers would be meeting, and we'd talk about building tracks. And I knew these fellas, and when I built my track, then they came over, and they realized they could have access to these models, and it exploded. Suddenly, for about 5 or 6 years, up until 2010, everybody wanted to race slot cars. All the guys who had expendable income that were my age, and there were few tracks. So they'd go to Andy's or they'd come to my house. Now it's become a collector item. There's cars that go for $100, you know what I mean? And so there's guys who don't race, but they love them and they collect them. So Fly, Scalextric, Slotted, those companies expanded. And now they build more cars for collectability than they do racing on a track. But they're still beautiful, don't get me wrong.
Of course, of course.
So that's where we stand today.
So today, it's more about collecting.
It's more about collecting, but the guys appreciate some place to run them. And I love seeing a group of 8 cars going around in scale against my backdrop. I mean, I dreamed about that as a kid, and here I am.
So the interesting thing about your track, and you can explain further, is it's basically an amalgamation, fix that, of multiple tracks, real racing. Speedways and so on.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about your idea of inspiration of creating different things, and the interesting part is integrating them together.
Yeah, that was the hard part. Integrating them together was the hard part. I knew racing, I loved racing, and remember back in my era, cars were changing every year. Aerodynamics were something people didn't understand, and it was exciting to see tires widen, wheels widen, wings and front flares go on, where today's racing don't have that. The cars go as fast as they possibly can go. They're like go-karts, right? But back then, every young guy was listening and watching every racetrack and every race on Wide World of Sports. So I knew different tracks. Laguna Seca had a big corkscrew curve that would swirl down, and the Detroit Grand Prix had a tunnel I wanted to reproduce. There was the banking at Daytona I always wanted to do, and I recreated that. There's about there's about 6 or 7 turns that I recreated on my racetrack.
Integrating them must have been a difficult thing, because I mean, this is like taking the best out of 15 golf courses and creating a golf
course. Guys, that was
easy.
The most fun. That was the most fun I had. You know, I started on graph paper and actually cutting pieces out, then making them full scale, and actually coming down in the basement and seeing if they fit. That was a blast. I really had a lot of fun. Was it hard? Yeah. Did I do it? Yeah, I did it.
How long did that process take you?
Oh, years, 2-3 years. I worked on it for 2-3 years. But I hand cut every slot. Today on CAD program, you can lay this thing out and have it CNC'd in a day. But of course you're paying for it.
Yes.
All I paid for was dust in my nostrils, man. I'd be cutting slots with a friend and a blower over my shoulder to keep the dust off my face. But I cut over 1,500 feet of 1/4-inch slot, eighth-inch slot, 1/4-inch deep. Wow. Something to be proud of, right?
So as the future comes, you know, there's now 3D printing that can really take away from the CNC. Is that something that you're considering for the future?
I have a good friend, Pat Bear, who is retired and just in the past 2 months does that for people. He will sit down with you and design a track, and he'll set up the printing and have the track cut for you.
Another question is, I noticed that you now are adding, let's say, little people all over the track. And the interesting part is they're now just basically nothing, and you're actually building or doing this on your own. So can you please walk us through that?
The bottom line is that Monogram made beautiful 1/32 scale pit crews and cameramen and flagmen, and I had them from my original racetrack. But of course, putting scenery on your racetrack is a very limited thing. I mean, everything breaks and gets knocked down. I use the things that I learned from tried and true HO scale layouts, where they harden everything so it doesn't. I couldn't go to the store and buy little figures. A friend of mine, Sam, made the first molds and showed me how to make a mold. And I was able to make a mold, for example, of all my cameraman and the camera itself. And then I went a step further and added a heavy weight at the bottom so it doesn't tip over, a tube up the middle, and an LED light on the top. You know, I embellished it. And I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. So technically all the little people on here had to be scratch made and scratch painted. I still got 150 fans sitting in the stands that I got to paint.
So that's going to be some work.
I like it.
Another question before Ryan takes over and asks you some question. This track, my understanding, is child-proof too, in the sense of if somebody's playing and knocks something out, it can be put back together. Let's talk a little bit about that. Can you tell us how you came to that, and what are you doing to make it so it can...
Every design I had to be, number one, realistic and to scale. And then number two, it had to be removable so I could take it to my desk and build it instead of being bent over the track. And then I drop it in. I can pick up 99% of the scenery and take it to my workbench. Number three, it had to be childproof because on every first Friday I would have the kids over and they would send towers flying with their hands when they get excited, you know. So I found that transmission tail shaft rubber bushings had springs in them that when you undid them, they popped open. They look like a steel rod, but when you hit them, they can actually flex. So I went to great pains to make sure that everything, all my light posts and things, had either a magnet or the spring to help flex it. And I think you guys, when you see the track, you'll see you can tap most anything and it'll bounce back.
So Uncle Jim, my dad was talking just a second ago about all the kids coming down here and racing here. And as you know, as I was one of those kids a couple of years back, I have a lot of fond memories being down here. Now, one thing I gotta ask, because I remember it being very chaotic when one of us would crash.
Oh yeah.
You've made some drastic improvements when it comes to the, stopping and starting the races and all that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, as I said before to your dad, the cars can't pass each other without going through a hairpin turn and changing lanes. And that was simple enough if you're an adult.
Yeah.
But the little kids have a little bit more trouble with it. And they learn to really watch their car all the way around because they may not be able, just like real racing, they may not be able to get by. And it got a little bit chaotic, so instead of insisting that they yell to the other drivers, my car is down, to get their attention so they don't get crashed, I set up a series of lights. I went to Frankenmuth actually and got a bunch of the first LED Christmas lights that came out, red, green, yellow. And I took Lego blocks, drilled out the Lego blocks, epoxied in the LED, and I ran all those wires back, every one of them back to a main circuit board, and then up to the controllers so that the kids can push a button and yellow lights would flash for a local warning light. And if there was a complete stoppage of the race, they would hit a red light and the red light would go on. I had buddies who were colorblind, so I ended up having to put big LED lights up on the walls, which I will show you later.
That's amazing. I remember being on the track and having someone scream from across the room, car down, or I got my car down on the hairpin turn, and everyone had to slow down and watch out. So that is something that will definitely make it a little bit easier for those.
Do you remember micro machines?
Yes,
those little when you were a little kid.
Yeah.
I had micro machines and I gutted them and took the little siren out of them, and I set them up so that when you hit the yellow button, the siren goes off. Because it still wasn't enough to see the yellow lights. They had to hear it to settle down. But after about an hour to 45 minutes, the kids settle down, and then we have a lot of fun.
Well, they get the hang of it. I remember those nights very fondly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then when you have the adults come in, I'm sure it's a little easier when it comes to regulation. But
well, you would think it would be, but not for all adults.
Really?
Some of them have a little trouble with this.
Yeah, a little bit of trouble with the trigger discipline, I suppose. But yeah, so beside the overarching scenery that my dad was talking about, I want to get into the nuts and bolts.
Sure.
A little bit of the track, how it
Sure.
works, why it's set up in a certain way. So let's have you come on over here, and we'll talk about the track a little bit.
typically a racetrack has slots cut into it with braided line, but because the car's wheels go over the adjoining slot, I had to develop a way to make it smooth. So in the art glass field, when they make Tiffany lamps, they call them Tiffany shades, they use copper tape to encircle the glass and then solder them together. I use that copper tape as the contact for the car's brush to get electricity. That way it's nice and smooth. The reason I needed it smooth, Ryan, was because my main goal was to recreate a 1/32 scale racetrack, and to do that I needed a narrow track, a track that was to scale, rather than a track that was 3.5 inches wide for 4 cars would be almost 28 inches wide. So in a nutshell, I thought, well, if I could group all 4 cars together on one side and then have a place for them to change lanes, they could pass one another. In other words, this Dodge right here is blocking this Mustang. When he gets to the hairpin turn, both have the opportunity to change to the opposite side of the track, and therefore they can pass each other. The first thing you got to say is they can block each other, but that's what real race cars do. So if both cars change lanes onto the opposite side, they'll begin to block each other again, and that's half the fun. Because when you get to the hairpin turn and change lanes, you got 150 feet to try to beat the other guy to the lane changer, to block him. So it's a race within a race, and that's how it differed from other slot car tracks. But the most important thing, Ryan, is it got the track to be narrow, and I was able to create a realistic layout, and I get more racing in a given space.
Yes, exactly. I can see that, you know, the scale, of course, is extremely important, not only for detail, but it adds that extra level of playability.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very unique, because as you said, if the track is too wide, it ain't, you know,
it takes up space, and you could pass each other.
Yeah, this adds the element of challenge, which I'm sure
it is
a welcome.
It is tough for old school slot car racers, guys my age, who were used to being able to pass each other at will.
Yeah.
You can't do that here. It's just like real racing. There's a car ahead of you. You got to do what you can to overtake them.
More specifically, we were looking at those cars on the track there.
Yeah.
Tell me about how they work a little bit. Tell me. You know,
well,
I can see that you have A and B listed.
When I started this track, all slot car tracks work on direct current, 12 volts, DC. And I raced 4 cars. Then I got the idea that if I could put 2 cars sharing one slot, which I know Eldon had done when I was a little kid, I didn't know how they did it. I realized that if I changed the polarity, this would be car A and the guy sharing the lane would be car B. If I could change his polarity around and switch the gear, he would still move forward. So I took 2 car batteries that were 12 volt DC and I fed them into the line, and it worked for a while, but it began to overheat. My brother said, you know what, if you take an AC transformer, an alternating current transformer, which Lionel toy transformers are, toy train transformers, we could run 2 cars with the help of a diode, which is a one-way valve. So by inserting one 7-cent diode into the cars, I was able to make one car sharing the lane, say A, move forward for 1/60th of a second under your control. The next 60th of a second, it coasts, and car B gets the impetus to run based on car B's controller. It happens so fast you don't even see it. The cars growl, and you get a lot more control. You can make the car creep, where with DC you can't. Once that DC motor gets going, you have to get it going. And because I had the pit area and I have to come in, the added control was a bonus, and I ran with it. I had AC and DC for about 4 years, and we totally stopped using the DC and went to A-car. We call it AC 2-car, alternating current, 2 cars in 1 slot.
It's an amazing system. I was just glancing at the power apparatus you had set up there.
It's a it's a Lionel transformer, and it's as simple as that. With a diode in each control and a diode in the car, we're able to run 2 cars at the same time in 1 slot. And it's been a success for over 14 or 15 years. And we have yet to burn out a motor. There are those who told us, you're going to burn out motors, and we didn't. It runs great. It really does run great.
It's kind of a trendsetter there. I mean, I can imagine people building tracks in the future are going to want to copy that design, you know.
Well, I have a website, ac2car.org, and people as far away as New Zealand and Australia and Chile and Norway and many guys in Belgium built tracks based on my idea, because you can get more racing. You're packing it in.
It's not only more racing, it's more complex.
Oh, it is more complex, but so is real racing.
Exactly.
You know, it's easy to be able to hit the stoplights like that, and the red lights come on all around the track. I could have made it where it kills the power and everybody stops. But that's not what real racing's about. You see the red light, you've got to come to a stop. So I have the kids actually drive. That was my thoughts. If we go caution and yellow lights go on around the track, everybody keeps racing, but they have to listen to what driver is telling them about them sliding off the track at the shell corner, for example. And they can drive up to it, and one of our corner marshals would see the yellow lights and hear the buzzer and go get the car.
It's great. It's a great system.
It is. It takes a while to get used to, and like I say, veterans of the old-fashioned way have the most trouble. Young guys like you started when you were 6 or 7, today you have no problem with it.
Precisely. Speaking of young racers and all that, I wanted to ask you real quick about the separation in the tracks there. So we have a set of 3 and a set of 4. Can you tell me why that might be?
Well, that happened because my youngest son Danny was about 5 when I designed the track, and I realized that at his age he wasn't going to be able to handle lane changing. So what I did is I let lane 4 bisect the middle of the track, and it goes around without any lane changing, so these 3 guys are able to come to here. Today the tracks I designed for people all the way up to Bobby Rahal's, you race 4 on one side and 4 on the other. To offset that and fix it years later, I put in a switch here. I don't know if you can see it, but the switch is right there, and all through this area right here there's 4 on this side and 4 on that side. The guy sharing lane 4, A and B, just like real racing, if a car is absolutely slower than the car behind him, he needs to pull over and allow him by. So in this stretch, lane 4 can pass.
Very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. That's a cool little detail. Just those.
Oh yeah.
Stories, you know?
Again, I've designed many tracks now with 4 and 4. I won't go that route. I just did it for Danny, but he's 40 years old now. He can handle it.
I hope he can handle the lane changes, right? You know. But beyond all that, beyond the technical aspect of this track, I know my dad touched on the detailing a little bit, the scenery here. I wanted to ask you a little bit about what's left. So we're looking at the pits over there, right? And we're looking at what you pointed out will be a bridge soon enough. So just tell me what kind of plans you might have in future for those areas.
There's areas that are unfinished, and if you look at it close, you'll notice it. I start by planting figures and things in that might distract drivers or block their attention. And if they complain about it, then I move those figures before I finish the area. This area at the pit entrance still has to be completed, as does that wall. And then that far side there where the trucks are parked has to be detailed. And as we go up the carousel turn, there's going to be a Michelin bridge coming across this way to that ESPN TV tower. And then there's a catwalk, which is done. The catwalk's going to lead to a walk that crosses over the bridge. I've still got a lot of work to do, but you know what? That's what's fun about this. I make little sketches and I plan, and sometimes I put things up, like if you notice in the pit area there's some gray boxes and a clear box. I want to see if drivers complain about that. If they do complain about it, I've got to redo it and shorten it. At one time I had a press tower that was going to be built over this set of stands. 90% of the tracks have that, but visibility was not going to be good. So now I'm going to move it to where it is at turn 3 in Daytona. It's going to be up above the entrance to the track. This is all going to get cut away, and there'll be a ticket booth inside there, and welcome to Northline Raceway signs flashing. I got all kinds of plans. This will be complete. This came out of a piano. I wanted them to be able to flex so that when people hit them, they don't break it. And then I've successfully used wedding veil material as the cyclone fencing across it.
That was another thing that I was very impressed by, and that's something that Dad touched on. The material here, I mean, it's just genius. It's all from another thing. I mean, you look at this, you know, I point to that, like, oh yeah, you know, that came from my garage, that came from a piano. This is
all cardboard, scratch made. There's 4 layers of cardboard to make this thickness. As you can see, it's a compound turn. So I had to dampen cardboard, glue it on, and lay it in place. It's pretty solid. Then I go back and I shade, and I found using different colored chalks is the best. I can create a rust look and a old detailed look just with chalk and a brush.
Speaking of that, you know, the crafting itself, we're going to have you take us into your crafting area, and we can take a look at
this.
You know, the behind the scenes process.
Yeah, right. Well, this is my work area. You know, I've got a paint booth right there that I use. And you know what, guys? I've put away my airbrush. I don't use my airbrush anymore. I'm able to start by painting everything I do flat black right off the bat. And then I mist it with the colors that I need just out of aerosol cans. There's only one type that I use, the 2X Rust-Oleum. And it's much easier to use. I don't have to clean the airbrush. I can just mist it on and get the look that I'm looking for, and then I finish it with chalk, and I spray it with dull coat, and I get it to look as lifelike as I can. And then not till then does it go onto the track. So basically I'll lift off an area and I'll bring it to my workbench and we'll work on it here, lift it back and put it on. This area here is dedicated to working on the tracks, the cars themselves. I've had so many friends crowding around here working on their cars that I decided to lift it up on milk crates and make it more accessible. And of course, since we're all getting older, we need the magnifier. But I'm not. Hey, I'm happy. I'm happy.
You can see a lot of pictures on the wall of different tracks from around the world.
These are my references. These are the references that I've collected all my life. And I've taken great pains to point out signs that I wanted to recreate, at turns I wanted to recreate. Even the cyclone fencing, I took these myself at the Detroit Grand Prix, and I take note of what size things are. I've gone as far as to have my son take pictures of me, just under 6 feet tall, next to things so that I could scale it up. This happens to be Professor Motor's diagram of how to put the diode into your car. He did that for me. It's on his website. So guys, before they come here, can prep their diode into their car. It only costs 7 cents. I've been collecting pieces, like I told you, for building and making slot cars. I've still got cases and cases of unbuilt cars because I was saving them. Then in 1995 or so, they began recreating cars that better than I could ever make. I mean, they're almost bulletproof. The kids and the adults smash them, crash them. Things that would annihilate a car in the 60s, the models today still keep running.
I remember when I was a kid flipping a car or two. So,
oh yeah.
I could appreciate.
Yeah, it didn't bother me unless it was mine, Ryan.
Right. Once I got my own, it was fair game. Now, as we look around again, the inspiration, that's awesome. But I'm starting to zone in on these posters you got on the wall. Just a little detail. Why don't you tell me about this?
This is all, again, it's reference material for myself. These were gifts from friends of mine that I helped work on their track. These guys, I realized I was short some emergency crew members, so I painted them. and then at my leisure when I'm camping, I'll detail them. These guys are going to be cruising 6 safety trucks that'll be around the track. So even though the track, it looks detailed, it'll come to life when all those figures are painted and around the track. So these guys will be the track maintenance crew. This I got an estate sale, and the poor guy painted this. He was a real race fan. I know because he had some great race books, and it broke my heart to see it go unsold. So I bought it. He had painted it, and I felt sorry for him. He was obviously a race enthusiast, so I wanted to hang it up for his sake.
Right. I mean, that's a wonderful little story, just about a small piece of this room. Last question I have for you at the moment.
Yes.
I want you to tell me specifically about some of the cars on here. You know, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, definitely. You know, again, I was telling your dad earlier that the hobby of slot cars had deteriorated, and they only made cars that they called womp womp cars, which didn't even look like cars. They were thingies to beat each other. They go so fast, 3 seconds a lap. It's just crazy. And I wanted a scale layout. And when I worked for Ford Motor Company on the Jaguar program, 2 British engineers who worked with me came to the Ford engineering plant, and they had heard about my track, and they brought me this car. Now mind you, I didn't have any of these other cars. I had just scratch-built models from when I was a kid. And I was just enthralled by it. It was made by Fly, and I just ate it. I mean, look at the detail on this car. Now today we're used to seeing models like this, but back in 1995, no way. And I got in touch with the hobby shop in London where they bought the car. He got them from a supplier in Belgium, and I began to import them to guys at Ford Motor Company. They come in a nice box, and they displayed them on their desks. And then on Wednesday, we'd come here and race at lunchtime. We had a Goodyear calendar at work, and we'd do 3 laps in time. And the guy with the best time would have his time put back on the calendar at work so that others would want to race. I had at least 12 or 15 friends come 4 or 5 at a time to race. So those were good times. In fact, they're touching base with me again 20 years later. Yeah, I had a guy come knock on the door just 2 weeks ago. He said, "I used to race here. Do you remember me?" I said, "Yeah, of course I do, Ronnie."
Oh, that's great.
So once we did that, the guys would gift me with a car for importing them and getting them. And actually, half of these cars are a gift for helping people work on their track and giving them advice. On my website, I would sit for hours giving guys advice and answering questions, but I got tired of the, what's the phrase they use, trolls, who are jealous of the fact that, you know, I've got a good thing going here. You know, they were into the old-fashioned, real wide track, and they didn't want them to do so. They ran interference, and it was difficult. But the guys in Chile, Argentina, not Argentina, but Chile and Australia, New Zealand, a bunch of guys in Belgium, even in Malta, my mom and dad's home country. Guys were building tracks and talking to me about it. It was great fun.
That's great. That's awesome. I'm looking around at some of the cars you have on display, and I see a pretty cool system you got going. Looks like you have race tracks around the room here.
I'll show you. I wanted to display my models because I loved them so much. I was collecting them, but they were all in crates and put away. So I designed a shelf unit that mimicked, in this case, Martinsville Speedway, the banking, and I created a slot and a small curb so that the tires of the truck would rest on it, and I was able to display my models. Martinsville, Daytona, North Wilkesboro Speedway, which I used to love as a kid. They've discontinued that, and Talladega. The wonderful thing about it, Ryan, is that it's dust-free. No dust goes up that high. And I've worked on the track and extended the track, which I can show you later. and I didn't have to dust up there because dust does not go up, it goes down. So it was a perfect way for me to display. So I extended it to Watkins Glen and Trans Am cars and Riverside. I used to watch that race too on Wide World of Sports. The Riverside International Raceway, the Los Angeles Times Grand Prix. They allowed basically any home-built car, and there were guys who were making wild cars with wild engines, and it was exciting racing. Today, these out-of-the-box go-karts with different bodies on them don't do justice to the excitement that we used to have. And I think that's why the slot car guys that are out there still have a passion for it, because when we were teenagers, every year there was a different kind of car and a different thing going on, you know. We remember that. And to see a car like these, the GT40s, today a lot of young guys come to me and say, oh, a GT40, they know it from the movie, you know, Ford versus Ferrari, which is a great story, but we lived it, guys, my generation, we lived it. In fact, we have we've had a Ford versus Ferrari race here every maybe 2-3 years.
Oh,
just for that.
That's awesome.
Just these cars right here, the Ferraris and the Fords.
I'm really loving the display system. I noticed, of course, you have Le Mans on the other end.
Yes, there's Le Mans. I turned those lights off onto the track, but I think we've got videos of that. So, and then I'm going to add Ford versus Ferrari up in that far corner. I've yet to do that. It's going to be very big with all these GT40s and Porsche P2s.
That's amazing. Well, thank you very much for talking with me today. And of course, for talking with my dad. We really
Of course. You know, you guys are doing me a favor talking about the track, presenting it to everybody.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed our time.
It's a lifetime of work. I've been working on this thing for 35 years. But I love it. I loved every minute of it.
It shows. This is certainly a labor of love, you know, just passion all around in every corner. You know, something I was saying to Derek, you know, our director before we came over here, is that you look around every nook and cranny, you'll find something that you didn't see.
And I'm willing to help anybody else who would like to apply my methods to 1/32 scale racing and make it look like we're recreating vintage racing. That's my goal.
Well, thank you very much. We'll have to have a race on this track and display it to all those people out there.
And come back when I do the Michelin carousel turn from Bridgehampton and all the other things I want to finish, especially the pit area, because the track is not done yet.
It's living, just like my dad said. It's a living track, and it's going to continue. I am absolutely sure. Well, thank you again.
All right, great. It was my pleasure. Guys my generation come here, they're in awe of these cars, because when we were kids and we went to the hobby shop, that's all we would salvage for.
Well, plus back, if we talk about the Le Mans in the 60s, was it 65 or 66 when they had the Ford one?
Ford versus Ferrari?
Yeah, Ford versus Ferrari. I mean, that was a historic moment for Ford Motor Company.
Yeah. Oh, it changed everything. And that's what I'm going to build over there. See, I've got a whole rack of GT40s and Ferrari cars, 512s that raced in that. And this is a collection of cars that raced post 1970 Le Mans when Porsche was king. Some of them have become so valuable that I don't put them on the track anymore. Especially for some reason, the yellow and green, the South Africans and I think it's Argentina.